Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing my January reading wrap up and we are going to talk about all the books that I read in January. I had a record of a reading month. I read 15 books, which is the most I have ever read in a month, which is absolutely insane. And so yeah, we have a lot to talk about, so let's just jump right into it. I will say I have 3 physical books here, but the rest of them I did read on my Kindle through the Libby app or just Kindle Unlimited. So yeah, I'll put the pictures up on the screen and everything, but yeah, let's talk about the 15 books that I read this month. First up, we have Running Mate, which is a marriage of convenience story that follows Madden, who is trying to run for Congress, but is learning that he needs to kind of appeal to the voters more, and since he is a single man, young, doesn't have any kids, they just aren't really buying that he's like truly invested as a congressman or a potential congressman. So he strikes up a deal with Odette, who they did go to school together when they were younger, but they weren't really friends and they haven't kept in touch. He says to Odette, like, would you be my essentially fake wife for 2 years just so he can essentially get elected to Congress? And Odette agrees because Madden will help pay for her parents' like assisted living needs and all of that. So they get married, they have this fake marriage, and yeah, it just kind of follows them as they're campaigning and trying to just get to know each other essentially. And yeah, overall I gave it 3.5 stars. It was really, really cheesy, but a good kind of cheesy, I guess. And yeah, I would recommend checking out this book. It is part of an interconnected series that follows I believe it's Wendell brothers, Madden, and then he has a bunch of brothers. And yeah, it was it was a good series. I liked it, and as you will find out, I read a lot of books by Leah Brenner, who is the author, and yeah, I really, really enjoyed them. Then I read A Winter in New York, and this book, it was frustrating to say the least. The male main character seemed aggressive and just like mean and not like I would not want to be friends with him or talk to him. And then the female main character was literally just lying every other sentence. And yeah, I was not rooting for the characters. I did not like them. It was like, it's supposedly a romance, but I didn't feel their connection at all. So I gave it 3 stars, maybe even 2.5. It was just not a fun read. So yeah, I guess if you want to read something that's frustrating, then look into it. But yeah, I don't know. I love this author because I love One Day in December. That's like that was a 5-star read when I read it. But then I've read A Winter in New York, and then I also read One Night on the Island, and I did not like either of those. So I might just be done with this author, which is sad since One Day in December was so great, but I just cannot get behind some of these characters, and I just don't believe their connection. Next, I read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I am so excited that I am rereading the series. I read it like in elementary, middle school, and yeah, it's just so fun to get to relive all of these, I don't know, these memories from when I was a kid. And I actually just got done watching all the movies for the first time, which was so much fun. And yeah, I give it 4 stars. I really, really liked it, and I know that's only going to get better as I get farther into the series. So yeah, really looking forward to continue rereading that series. The next book that I read was my favorite of the month by far, and that was Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. This was a 5-star read. I was very, very hopeful that it would be amazing, and it was even better than I thought it would be. I went to Target and bought this the day that it came out. I was so excited. And this is like an enemies to lovers kind of trope in this book. It follows Emily, who is, I guess, the main character of the book in Rome, Kentucky, like the other books in the When in Rome kind of universe. And Emily is a 2nd grade teacher, along with Jack is also a 2nd grade teacher in the small town. They just do not get along with each other. But then Jack gets engaged and moves out of Rome and just leaves his job teaching. But then the marriage or the engagement falls through and he moves back to Rome and ends up moving into the house right next door to Emily. And Jack is also like a very, very famous novelist under a pen name, and he doesn't want anyone to find out or know about that. And then Emily is also trying to write her first book and pretty much has a whole first draft complete. and she accidentally emails it to the principal of the school that they both work at. And so she enlists Jack's help to try and get that back because she doesn't want her principal to know about this like romance novel that she's writing, because their principal is very like traditional, I guess, if you'd want to call it that. And yeah, they just become very, very close friends and obviously more, and I loved it so much. Sarah Adams really just gets like better and better with every book that she writes, and I loved it so much. Then I read Listen for the Lie, which is like this mystery thriller book, and I actually listened to a lot of it on an audiobook because it's like kind of set around a podcast, and so I really, really recommend checking the audiobook out. I think it was really well done, and overall I gave 4.5 stars. It follows Lucy, who many years ago she was found wandering the streets covered in her friend's blood. Her friend was murdered, but Lucy has no memory of what happened that night and no memory of what happened to her friend Savvy. And everyone just kind of assumes that she did it because she doesn't have any memory or claims that she doesn't and is covered in her friend's blood. But she was never convicted or charged with the crime, and I mean, essentially it ruined her life though because she lost her best friend and everyone accused her of hurting her. But then years later, she is trying to move on with her life still, and there is a famous podcaster, and the podcast is called Listen for the Lie, and he is trying to like reopen and re-examine this case to figure out what happened, which brings up all these old feelings for Lucy, but she is honestly like helping him try to get to the bottom of this because she wants to know if she actually did it because she doesn't know. And yeah, it was a really, really great mystery. I was very invested the whole time, and I loved the writing style. And yeah, the audiobook was incredible, so I definitely recommend at least listening to parts of it. But yeah, that was definitely my favorite mystery that I've read in a while, and my second favorite book of the month. Then I read Housemate, which is part of that like Wendell family interconnected series. This one follows the sister though, Sophie, and Sophie is a recent widow. She lost her husband when she was almost 9 months pregnant, I believe, with their daughter. Her husband was in the military and he was killed in action, and she's just really trying to rebuild her life. It is a few years after her husband passed. And then Drew is a single dad and a surgeon, and he works with Sophie's dad at the hospital. And Sophie is living with her parents, but she really wants to get her own place and just kind of start her life over. And Drew has like a basement apartment in his home, and he offers it to Sophie, and so she ends up living in his basement apartment, renting it, and also she's like kind of a part-time nanny for his daughter. And yeah, that is just kind of their story. It was very, very sweet, wholesome. There are definitely more intense moments just with the grief part of it since Sophie lost her husband. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I liked the characters, and I gave it 3.5 stars overall. It was just another very, very light, or not light, just cheesy romance that had some deeper topics, but it was like closed door romance, which I really, really enjoyed. Then I read Checkmate, which is another book in that Wendell family series that follows one of the brothers, Drew, who is very like type A. He's an accountant. He doesn't like change at all, and he is next door neighbors to Isabella, who is the complete opposite of him. Like, she is very spontaneous and is very out there, so they do not get along. And Isabella, she works at her family's restaurant, but she also is a pretty like established travel blogger. She has a travel blog, and she ends up like planning this expedition to see Machu Picchu, and then one of her like pamphlets for this trip ends up in Drew's mailbox. And since his family is always giving him crap about how he doesn't do anything adventurous, he decides to go on this trip, and it's at the same time that Isabella is going on it, and so they end up going on this little expedition together in like this small contained group. And that's just kind of when they see that they do have some things in common and that they enjoy spending time with each other. I didn't really love the ending of the book, but I still gave it 3.5 stars. It was just another cheesy-ish romance book. But yeah, definitely recommend checking out the author. And my favorite out of that like interconnected series is Cabin Mate, which is the first one that I read, and I read that in December, and that was by far my favorite. The next book I read was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, so the second book in the series. Gave this one 4 stars. It was really, really great. I would say I like Sorcerer's Stone a little bit better, but still incredible. I cannot wait to read more of the books in February and just the rest of the year. And yeah, I would recommend if you haven't been thinking about rereading the series, definitely check it out because it is worth a reread. The next book I read is called Near Miss, and originally I gave it 3.5 stars, but looking back, I'm dropping that down to 3 stars. It follows like a famous football kicker who ended up missing like a game-winning kick, and now he's like one of the most hated people in the city. And he tries to volunteer at a hospital to get some good press to help him out, and that's where he runs into this surgeon. And essentially, they are not dating, but they are together. It was so much spice. I did not enjoy it. Like, did not enjoy it at all. I really don't like the characters, and was not a fan. If you like that kind of a book, you probably like it, but not for me. Next, I dove into another series by Leah Brunner, and this is the DC Eagles hockey series. They are all closed-door hockey romances, and they were overall really, really great. The first one that I read was Desire or Defense. This follows Mitch, who is a pro hockey player, and he is also known as being very like aggressive on the ice, and he gets into a lot of fights. And he ends up getting a 15-game suspension for one of those fights. And along with his suspension, he also has to coach like youth hockey. And when he goes to coach youth hockey at like their first practice, he ends up yelling at some kids. And that's when Andy walks in, because Andy's little brother is on this hockey team, and she didn't appreciate that Mitch was yelling at him. And so, yeah, Andy chews him out, and then they kind of begin a little friendship, and a very flirtatious friendship. And then Andy is a nurse who is dealing with the loss of her parents and is also now the guardian of her younger brother. And she's dealing with all that, and then she met Mitch and really, really got along with him. And yeah, it's like definitely a rom-com, like a Grumpy Sunshine rom-com, but they do talk about deeper topics, obviously, like with the loss of Andy and her brother's parents, and then Mitch has some mental health concerns, obviously, with the anger that he has. It's kind of not only on the ice, but also off the ice. But I really, really enjoyed their connection. I thought they were such a great couple, and I really like how they communicated with each other. So yeah, definitely recommend checking it out. Then I read the second book in that hockey series, which is called Flirtation or Face Off. This one is my favorite in the series. I gave it 4 stars, and it follows Kobe, who is one of Mitch's teammates, and he has always been kind of like, I don't know, the hot guy of the team. And he developed a crush on this girl, Noelle, who was one of his teammates' girlfriend's friends. And he always just kind of flirted with her, but she didn't feel the same way. And then Noelle ends up, she's a professor at a university, and she develops a crush on one of the other professors in her department, I believe. And then she goes to Kobe and asks him to essentially be her dating coach, because she just is very awkward around guys. And so they go on a bunch of practice dates. So it's kind of like fake dating, but not like fully fake dating. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed them together. I loved Kobe. I love Noelle. They are just so cute together, so I really, really loved this book. And then I took a break from the hockey books, and I read The Edge of Falling, and I wish I didn't take a break because this book was not good. I gave it 2.5 stars, maybe even 2 stars. I should have DNF'd it, like just stopped. I was just hoping something would change and it would get better. I didn't enjoy it. It's young adult, but it follows very, very emotional and heavy topics, but I did not like how it was done. It follows like the social elite in Manhattan, and it felt very like Gossip Girl, but like trauma heavy, and I didn't like it. So not gonna spend a lot of time talking about it because I want to get rid of this book, and yeah, not a fan. After a not so great book, I went back to the DC Eagles hockey series, and I read Betrothal or Breakaway. This is like a fake marriage. It follows Ford, who is the team captain of the DC Eagles, and then his like best friend from childhood, Amber. And Amber recently had a baby, and the father of the baby and her ex-boyfriend, like he left her as soon as she found out she was pregnant. And then she is just kind of raising this baby alone, and Ford has always kind of had feelings for her ever since they were kids. And then Amber finds out that she might need a heart surgery, and she cannot afford it. So Ford is like offering to pay for it, but then he comes up with the idea of saying, why don't we get married so that Amber can get on his health insurance, and they end up doing that. They get married, and then Amber moves in with Ford, and he helps kind of take care of her daughter. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. it was just a really, really sweet story. Definitely dealt with some heavier topics like the other books in the series, but yeah, a fake marriage is always great, and they were just really, really cute together. Ford was so sweet, and yeah, I loved their connection, I loved their friendship, and their just relationship overall. Next, I read Passion or Penalty, which is a DC Eagles novella, and it's actually like technically the first book in the series. Like if you find it on Goodreads, it says 0.5. So I should have read this first. I didn't, but oh well. And it follows Mel, who was very, very good friends with her brother's friend West. The three of them were very good friends growing up, and then when Mel is 18 years old, she gets her wisdom teeth out, and when she is kind of on all those pain meds, she sends a video to West, her brother's friend, and just confesses her love for him, and then West says that he doesn't feel the same way, and that kind of ends their friendship essentially and make things awkward. And then 5 years later, they're now in their early 20s. Mel is working in DC for a congressman. Actually, she's working for Madden, who was from an earlier book that I mentioned, who was running for Congress. And so Mel is working in DC. She's loving life, but she's still not really close with West ever since she confessed her feelings. And then West has now become a professional hockey player, and he was on a team in Toronto, but then he gets traded to the DC Eagles and is moving to Washington, D.C., and he reconnects with Mel, and then kind of they rediscover their friendship, and then Mel is kind of believing that Wes might have the same feelings that she has for him, and yeah, very, very sweet book. It talks a little bit about anxiety and just, I guess, yeah, it does talk heavily about Mel's anxiety that she has after a traumatic event that happened when she was a kid, so just be aware of that, but yeah, overall, I really, really enjoyed the book. I enjoyed the characters, and I like the series overall. And I am really excited because one of the other characters on the team, Bruce, he has a book that's coming out in March, I believe. I think that might be the final book in the series, but yeah, I'm really, really excited for that. The last book that I read this month was Red Queen. This is definitely like a mix of the Hunger Games and the Selection series. I feel like that's a good way to kind of describe it, with a little bit more like fantasy though, and like, I don't want to say like magic, but like powers, I guess you could say. And yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars. Overall, it was pretty good. It just took me a while to really get into it, and get kind of invested in the characters. And there were definitely parts that shocked me. If you know, you know. But I probably will continue the series, because I think there's like 3 or 4 other books, and then I see that she does have a different series called Realm Breaker. But yeah, I'm not like dying to get the next book because, I don't know, maybe fantasy just isn't really my genre, but yeah, it just wasn't my favorite, but like if you like fantasy books, I think that you would really, really like this. So yeah, just take that review with a grain of salt because I don't really read a lot of fantasy, but yeah, I don't even want to attempt to try to like describe this book because it's just like, fantasy books are a lot, honestly. So those are my ratings and reviews for the 15 books that I read in January. I had such a great reading month with definitely a variety of books. And yeah, let me know if you have read any of these, what your thoughts were about them. I would love to talk about it in the comments. And then don't forget to follow me on here, subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on TikTok, and I will see you in the next video.